So putting on hold the other 15 video essays I'm actively working on, and the fact that I have a head cold and have cricked my neck very badly, I need to talk about this, hopefully while not moving my neck too much. Netflix recently announced that they are banning password sharing, and explained how they are going to police that going forward. Apparently Netflix accounts are still shareable, but only within one household. To ensure that your devices are associated with your primary location, Netflix is now asking users to connect to the Wi-Fi at said location, open the Netflix Apple website, and watch something at least once every 31 days. Accounts are only meant to be used within that household. Netflix will prompt users who try to sign into your account elsewhere to sign up for their own account instead, and block their access until they do. Netflix will offer a profile transfer feature that will allow them to migrate their show recommendations, watch history, etc., to their own account if they decide to create one, as if that somehow sweetens the pot. It doesn't. Netflix uses information such as IP addresses, device IDs, and account activity to determine whether a device signed into your account is connected to your primary location. Signing into Netflix outside of that may lead to the device in use being blocked from Netflix. Traveling users who want to use Netflix on a hotel smart TV, company laptop, etc., can request a temporary code from the service when signing in. This will give them access to their account for 7 consecutive days. Yep. Just 7. If your device has been blocked incorrectly, you'll need to contact Netflix personally in order to get it unblocked. And I want to talk about how that's fucking stupid. Now, Netflix, as of this morning when I'm recording this on the 4th of February, has walked this back, has claimed it wasn't supposed to be in the announcement, but I think that they were testing the waters and then realized they were surrounded by riptides and tried to get out of the water as fast as they could. Because girl, it has been a while since I have seen something so immediately and universally rejected. See, I grew up in a piracy household. We were poor. DVDs were expensive, and we didn't have Sky, or cable, as Americans call it. We went to Blockbuster and the movies every now and then, but that was a treat. So we downloaded stuff. I say we like I had any say. I didn't even know it was illegal until I was a teenager. I just thought everybody kept most of their movies on a hard drive. Once I was aware, I felt sort of embarrassed by it, because we couldn't afford more DVDs or more cinema trips. Before, it was cool that we had so many movies, but now it was something shady that could get us in trouble because we couldn't afford to do it another way. I have numerous essays in me about how poor people are taxed for being poor, criminalized and fined in ways the rich just aren't for the same crimes, but we're not talking about the Tory government fuckfest right now. I'll get to you. And then Netflix came along, and piracy was all but forgotten from our household. I'm not kidding. We went from that being the only way that we could watch stuff to watching everything on Netflix. Because Netflix had everything, all in one place. And new content too, and more IPs being added every day. It was amazing. I was obsessed with it as someone who has spent most of her life being obsessed with TV and movies, and downloading things became a thing of the past, a relic from my childhood that was as time-locked to me as my first Nokia phone. And also, if there are any authorities watching, a fictional story I'm telling to make a point. And then things started to change. Amazon Prime started to encroach upon the market along with the smaller streaming services like Hulu, but that was manageable. I can afford a couple of these subscriptions, it's not too bad. Then Disney Plus launched and took over the other big gap in the market, taking a bunch of their content off Netflix to host it on their own site, and kicking Netflix even further down the pile. In fact, this happened more and more as more random streaming services started to appear. Companies weren't content with just hosting their content on Netflix and getting paid residuals or charging Netflix to stream them. They wanted all the revenue. And so one by one, every company and their dog created a streaming service. I'm talking Peacock, Paramount, HBO Max, Apple TV+, Fubo TV, Rip to Quibi, YouTube Premium, Rakuten Viki, iQIYI, and probably a whole host of other things that I can't think of off the top of my head. Now sure, some of them were worth it, like Gaga Ulala, which hosts entirely queer content, or Dropout, which you feel like you actually are paying for the content to be created, but for the most part, they all felt kinda like greedy capitalist cash grabs. Suddenly, the affordable alternative to buying DVDs or going to the cinema or paying for cable has become 4 times as expensive as all of that if you want to see the things you like. Because you'll pay for one, realize it doesn't have half the content you want, pay for another, realize that doesn't have half the content you want, pay for another, rinse and repeat until you're spending extortionate amounts on subscription streaming services. And for what? We're already in a cost of living crisis. Add in $50 a month on streaming services and you've got an extra source of stress and drain on your income that you could replace with piracy. Piracy doesn't exist in a vacuum. People don't just do it because it's sexy. You're thinking of the original pirates. I would always rather pay for the thing I'm consuming because I think artists and writers and everybody else involved in film and TV and novels and art deserves to be paid for their labor. I don't pay for Disney Plus or Amazon Prime, and I don't really consume their content unless I'm watching at a friend's place because I don't support monopolies, And that was one of the other things that had been good about Netflix. Sure, it was originally the monopoly on streaming, but that wasn't because it owned every other company and IP. It was because it offered a service that nobody else did. And then the two big monopolies took over and a bunch of Netflix's revenue was cut into, and they started to make stupid choices, like cancelling good shows all the time, as if that isn't going to turn their user base away. People like getting invested in shows long term. That might be less than the number of people who only watch the first few seasons, but when you're running a service, you can't just rely on new accounts. You have to also maintain your current user base, because when they start leaving, that's when you're fucked! Like I said, it's a cost of living crisis. We're basically already in a recession. One of the first things people are going to cut out is entertainment. And Netflix thinks we won't just drop it? I haven't been to the cinema in a year. I've cancelled 3 of the 7 streaming services I was subscribed to because I literally couldn't afford them, and I'm about to get rid of another 2. I'm on my family's Netflix account. There's 5 profiles. One from my mum and stepdad, his mother, his son, my sister, and me. We all live in different places. His mother is in Tasmania. I'm not sure where his son lives anymore, but he's moved around a lot. My sister currently lives in Queensland, and I live in England! Not to mention, my mum and stepdad, whose account is the central one and basically serves as the quote-unquote home network, are living in a caravan. They sold their house so they could travel for a year or 2, and their plan is to cover the whole of Australia. That's a big continent! What in the hell is a home network supposed to look like for them? They're paying for an account with 5 profiles. Why should they be charged extra just because their kids don't live at home anymore and they wanted to travel? They're already paying extra to have those profiles. And none of us are giving away our passwords, by the way. Nobody comes anywhere near my Netflix account unless I am specifically making them watch something I'm obsessed with. I'm not having anybody use my account and screw up my recommendations and to watch lists. Do you think I'm crazy? Don't answer that. I want to support Netflix so badly because they were one of the few big companies who didn't start as a monopoly, but they just keep making bad choices. This is like when you're friends with someone who keeps seeing the worst guys and you're trying to be supportive, but every week she comes back to you like, OMG bestie, I've had the best idea. And you just know that it's about to be one of the worst things you've ever heard. It's so frustrating. Capitalism is already making my life miserable, and now it's squeezing out even my distractionary tactics. Because I refuse to give money to Amazon or Disney. That's not going to happen. But it shouldn't be necessary for society to go back to piracy. Piracy shouldn't need to exist. In 2003, when Steve Jobs created iTunes, he said, quote, "We believe that 80% of the people stealing stuff don't want to be. There's just no legal alternative. So we said, let's create a legal alternative to this. Everybody wins. Music companies win, the artists win, Apple wins. And the user wins because he gets a better service and doesn't have to be a thief." And this is where I rant about capitalism again. When inflation rises at a steeper rate than wages, people can't afford to pay for extras, which means everybody suffers. The economy suffers because there's less people eating out, going for coffee, going to the cinema, going to paid activities, and partaking in community building things that involve extra money and time they don't have. Which then further exacerbates the problem because companies start hiking the prices to get the most out of their products now that they're selling less, and also continue not to pay their workers a living amount because they're not getting money, because their products are too expensive. It's a fun and sexy catch-22 that we're all aware of and just pretend is a totally normal thing. Paying livable wages would literally make the economy better. We have proof of this, but politicians don't care about that because they don't care about the working class. Particularly in the UK at the moment, there have been record-breaking numbers of protesters in protests for important jobs like the rails, nurses, and teaching, because they're not being paid enough. The Tories have admitted they've now spent more money trying to tamp down the rail protests and strikes than they would have done just paying them what they originally wanted. Instead of listening to the people they're being paid to make decisions for, they're trying to crack down on protesting to make it illegal. Not paying people living wages is already tanking the economy, but our politicians don't care about that because they're in the pockets of big companies. So as long as they're getting paid, they don't care about the rest of us. They get free clothes and food and flights because they can claim it back on their taxes. I think if I tried to claim a flight back on my taxes, I'd be shot on sight. But these politicians don't need to worry about the cost of living. It's not a concern for them. So they don't care. Governments already don't give enough credence to the arts. We're told art degrees are a waste, we're told arts jobs are lesser than science or business ones, and we're generally sneered at by the government. Just look at that bloody Fatima cyber ad. Insane. But you try taking art away from people, and you watch what it turns them into. Art degrees make movies, they make books, they make advertising, they make clothes, they make life worth living, because a life without access to art isn't a life. It's a punishment. It's withholding. That's why piracy exists. Because even though people might get in trouble for it, they want to consume art. The more of a paywall you put up between humans and art, the more you turn those people against you. Netflix learned that the hard way this week. YouTube better start learning that lesson as quickly as possible if they don't want to be humbled the same way. And those conservative governments who are squeezing our wages and letting the cost of living go up until we can't afford to enjoy life or partake in art, one day they're gonna learn too. Because people can only be pushed around and deprived for so long before they snap. And I hope to God I'm there to see it. Front row tickets, paid in full. I don't have a fun outro today. That's all I have to say today. I'm just frustrated at capitalism, as per usual. I don't want every single one of my videos to be about capitalism, but invariably every time I research any kind of topic, it always comes back to capitalism and conservatism and abusing the system to keep poor people down, to keep the working class under the boot, so to speak. Like, almost every topic I research comes up at this at some point, which is indicative of how much it is controlling everything. Like, I don't understand how, like, right-wing conspiracy theorists exist when, like, there's actual, you can watch people manipulating the capitalist system. It's so much easier to conspiracy theorize about what's actually happening, you know? I just wanted to talk about it because even though they walked it back, I do think it is inevitable that they are going to try and push this through more, you know? Like, they've walked it back for now because the backlash was so intense, but I don't think that this is the last really bad capitalistic decision we're going to hear from Netflix. But yeah, comment, let me know what streaming services you think are worth it. Like I said, I think Gaga and Dropout are two really good ones. I'm off to go commit piracy. For legal reasons, that is a joke. Annyeong!